46 years.
3 beloved isles.
1 beloved station, Radio Cayman.
The voice.
The heart.
The soul of the Cayman Islands.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And we have the excellent pleasure of having His Excellency as our first guest. And then, if the gentleman doesn't mind me saying, I affectionately call him our poet laureate, Mr. Leonard Dilbert, will join us thereafter. So please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255. Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome, Mike, and thanks for joining us. And thanks to His Excellency, Governor, for sitting with us. I hope that as we continue as sort of a developing democracy, that we have not only respect, and I always say this at every chance, not to take for granted the access that we have to go sit in Parliament, to even in our courts, for instance, to watch proceedings, to be respectful and mindful of protocols and procedures and all of the things that will ensure a proper outcome. But as governor, you make yourself available on all of the media, and it would be media.
Well, thank you, Dwayne, and it's a pleasure to be here with you again on this rather wet and soggy Thursday as we go into this sort of wonderful holiday weekend. But I try to be as open and accessible as possible, and I think it's an important part of my role as governor to be accountable as well, and to be asked questions and to have to give information. So I think that's just part of the democratic society that we live in, and we should be thankful that we can do that, because you can't all over the world, as we know.
Even in some, sort of business conferences, the level of security and access. In today's world, you would think, wow, am I going into something dangerous? But it's the nature of the world, and we should not take that for granted. Yeah. And again, I thank you too for your reminder of us as a driving populace to be a little bit more considerate and respectful on the roads, because it is our safety, but it's also our enjoyment as well. So through you, we get to be reminded that, to whom much is given, much is required. So again, thanks for sharing with us. It is an exciting time, though, to see Her Majesty, or anyone, but especially her, a lady that is things revered and respected globally, without question. If more of us could aspire to what I think she epitomizes, that humility, that sense of respect for self, but for office and for others, we would be a better people. Yeah. No, I think it is the most remarkable milestone that you can imagine. 70 years of selfless duty and service. She's really just put herself at the service of everybody in the UK, of the overseas territories, of people in the Commonwealth. It is an incredible milestone. I often think these anniversaries sort of sometimes help us just step back a bit and see things in a broader perspective. And if you think about
Cayman and the changes that we've seen in Cayman over the 70 years of Her Majesty's reign. It's quite remarkable, that the difficult beginnings. Life was tough, seafaring routes and all of that. Life was tough, but to transform that into what is a thriving, highly successful jurisdiction based around financial services, tourism, and our sort of local economy. That's incredible. Yes, we have challenges. Yes, we have problems. Everywhere in the world has those. But if you just put it in perspective of the progress that we've made, I think it's Cayman's progress is as remarkable as Her Majesty's sort of 70 years on the throne. And we did have a wonderful set of events planned. I think the rain and the wind that is coming has obviously impacted some of that. It's very sort of disappointing we've had to postpone the air show tomorrow because safety has to be absolutely paramount, and with the wind and the rain, you couldn't really do that. But also the spectator experience, we want people to really come out and enjoy the air show. And if the weather is as it is today, that's not going to be possible. So sadly, that was it was a necessary decision. I still have a busy weekend of events. So today at 2:00 I'll be popping out into Georgetown to listen to our town crier, Mr. Merrin, who's and I met him the other night. So I will go and give him a cheer at 2:00, which is the sort of the launch of our weekend of events. Tomorrow we don't have the air show. Saturday I then go to Cayman Brac, and I think it probably is the first time we've held a Queen's birthday party in the Brac, and we have a parade, a Queen's birthday party parade in the Brac as well. And I'm staying on Saturday evening. So there's an event at Spot Bay and some fireworks. So I'm really looking forward to being in the Sister Islands for this weekend as well. And then Sunday, we have the Remembrance Service at Elmsley Church, and I'm privileged to be able to say a few words at that service about Her Majesty. And then on Monday, and I'm told at the moment the weather looks good for Monday. I'm told that it may all have cleared. We may have the sun back, and then we have the Queen's birthday party and parade at Government House. So that starts the parade at 5:00, and then we'll be, as usual, conferring some Queen's medals on a few individuals who got them in the last round. And then we go inside into the house, into the gardens of the house for the party. There'll be music. There'll be lots of good food. We've also got the platinum cake that will be eaten at the Queen's birthday party. And then at the end of that, at 8:00, fireworks on 7 Mile Beach, just to round off our weekend. And I think those are going to be really spectacular. So I hope lots of people come out to watch us all the way along sort of 7 Mile Beach and up into West Bay from Georgetown. So they'll be spectacular. And I do want to just sort of take a moment just to also congratulate at the birthday honours, Her Majesty's birthday honours. Cayman is very well represented in the list that was announced late last night. So my warmest congratulations to the Honourable Chief Justice Anthony Smellick QC, who has been knighted. So that's the second knight in Cayman in the last year. Cindy Scotland, Managing Director of the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority, gets an OBE, and I think that's a huge congratulations to her, but also a signal of respect and confidence in Cayman's financial services industry. Steve Barrett, who's our former prison director, who has departed the islands some months ago, for his contribution to working in our prison services in Cayman, in the Turks and Caicos, but also in Scotland for many, many years. And Jonda Obi at the Red Cross, a wonderful director of the Red Cross, incredibly energetic, and leads a fantastic organisation of volunteers who really do give everything to our island. So I send my congratulations to all of them. I'm delighted that Cayman is well represented in the birthday honours list. Very, very, very pleased about that.
And this bodes well for not just the jurisdiction, but the people, as they see themselves as part of the Commonwealth, as part of the region, but on the global stage as well. Yeah. And maybe it'll inspire our youth to service, as Her Majesty has always without question, just demonstrated with an ease, a willingness, a grace.
Yes.
She is very inspiring.
She is, and I think it's not for everybody. We have to recognise that. But I think the vast majority of people in the UK, certainly in the Cayman as well, are just wanting to sort of celebrate and mark this incredible anniversary. And she, for me, she's been a real symbol of continuity and stability throughout. Well, all my life. I mean, I'm not 70, not yet. Anyway, so I don't know anything else. And there are very, very few people can remember a former monarch. But she's been. Our political life is often quite turbulent, quite noisy, quite difficult. There are things we don't like, things that we may want to criticise. But certainly the Queen herself throughout that period has been a constant and a symbol of integrity, a symbol of continuity, that service and that dedication to duty. And we still to this day know very, very little about her views on anything. Yeah. Which is I always find that quite extraordinary. But that she's had to ensure that was the case through a lot of sort of care and hard work in how she's managed her own interactions. So yeah, she's I find I'm in awe of her role over that period, and still going strong into her 97th year. And she was on the balcony of Buckingham Palace as I left home this morning at 7 o'clock to go to an Inclusion Cayman event, which was a very, very moving but successful event as well this morning. But I saw the royal family come out onto the balcony to watch they did have an air show in the UK. The weather was okay in the UK, but they all came onto the balcony. Her Majesty was on the balcony, into her 97th year. So extraordinary.
And this is she, I think, epitomizes the servant leader.
Yes.
And that humility that she has. And as we go into the break, I'm thinking that in an era where not only 70 years, but as you said, she's almost 100 years old. Yeah. Right? She's seen so much change, political, social, economic change, and yet she moves about now. Perhaps unlike some of her others in her court, as it were, she's managed not because she has great handlers and controls the messaging. She's managed because of the deportment, the decorum, the respect that she has to ensure that the office is always respected because she's respectable to it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Her character is what's really allowed her to be the person she is. I've met her 3 times. I've been very fortunate. Once as governor, and I've said before, but she very fondly remembered the visits to Cayman, and she recalled elements of the visits. So she is a quite remarkable woman.
All right. Well, sir, let's quickly pause and take a short break, and we come back. Sure. And please rejoin us.
Busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
Workforce Opportunities and Residency Cayman are reminding customers that applications must be completed in full or they will not be accepted. In efforts to improve customer service and processing time, only fully completed applications will be accepted. Customers are responsible for providing the required information for the application to be processed and are encouraged to review the application checklist before submission. For guidance, visit www.worc.kayman.gov
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks again for joining us. And thanks to our governor for being with us. And as you were sharing, maybe globally, and especially in this time, the importance to be able to look to someone, to look to events, to unify us. We are quick to look at our differences, and yet we're more alike than we are different. But for some reason, we magnify the differences, we downplay, the things that should bring us together. Hopefully this weekend will remind us as a people, especially the fact that 1,000 different nationalities live and reside amongst us. Well, maybe not quite that much, maybe 990. A good time to come together and appreciate that we're connected in so many ways.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it is about that sort of putting our lives in perspective when we have these amazing anniversaries, and the rain may dampen our celebrations a bit, but I don't think it in any way dampens the respect and admiration that many of us across the islands have for Her Majesty. And I felt that as governor, just going around, and it's hard to think it's over 3 years since Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall came here on a visit as well, and that for me was also a very successful visit. There was a lot of warmth in that visit, and so I think there is warmth and respect for the royal family and the Queen. The Queen has been the sort of figurehead of that for so long. And as all families do, there's been some challenges and difficulties in the family as well. But she has always maintained that respect, that decorum, and just that sort of selfless duty, really, that spirit of selfless duty, which I think all of us can look up to. And as you say, we can all take some inspiration for that. So I think despite the rain, I hope we will still have a good set of activities over the weekend. I think the air show is just being postponed for, I hope, only a few weeks, but it will definitely happen. I think it was going to be a really exciting event. I was aware of the details that were coming together very well. It won't be as big as it was 20 years ago straight away, but over time we can build it back up, and it can become a real feature of our calendar, important for international visitors and the tourism sector. And we want to get that combination of some military aircraft and some civilian aircraft. And I know people like to see the jets and the noise that they may make, and I think we would have had that, but. Safety first, but I just hope that if the weather does improve, we have a really good showing on Monday. It probably will be the last Queen's birthday party that I host as governor, because I'll have been by next June. I won't be around next June. I will probably be departing in March of 23. So this will be our last Queen's birthday party. So I would love to see a good turnout. Last year we had about 1,000 people through the doors during the 2 hours. Everyone said it was one of the best attended Queen's birthday parties that we'd had, and having the parade on West Bay Road worked really well. I think everyone on the parade, firstly, really enjoyed that, because it meant they could then come in to the party. They didn't have to come all the way over from Heroes Square. So they all enjoyed it, and also I think the spectacle along the road is a much better spectacle visually. It looks incredible. Colour, the tradition, our culture, and we have the Coast Guard and the regiments. We have new services marching as well. So I hope that the weather clears up and we can round off our weekend with a wonderful day on Monday evening, ending in those fireworks.
Yeah, well, as they jovially refer to him as the Lord Mayor of East End, he does a wonderful job, and I think this time he probably wants to exceed all expectations.
Well, I hope so. Now I'm very conscious that you have a man of words about to descend, Mr. Dilbert, and I don't want to keep him waiting any longer. I've got across the key messages that I just wanted to get across as we head into this weekend. Let me just wish everybody a wonderful weekend, whatever you're doing. We've got 2 bank holidays, 2 public holidays, which one of the most popular decisions government has made in the last 18 months or so was to have that extra holiday for this weekend. So I wish everybody a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see very many people at various events over the next few days.
Well, thank you very much, not just for coming into our studio, but for serving as governor. And 2 years away, it gives me time to have a transition. Susan's like, No, I love the laughter, the candidness, and the respect and love that we have for you. But as you have obviously expressed to our people as well.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you.
A wonderful weekend.
All right,
safe
and you as well, and enjoy Mr. Dilbert.
Indeed, as His Excellency shared, when we come back, Mr. Leonard Dilbert will be our guest.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
During June, CUC and CUC's subcontractors UMC will be erecting and framing poles between 7 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. Mondays to Fridays on Rex Crichton Boulevard between Prospect Primary and Norfolk Drive. Motorists are asked to exercise extreme caution when using Rex Crichton Boulevard as there will be traffic management in place. For more information, contact 949-5200 or email service@cuc.ky.
History has taught us that in crisis, humanity will always respond with innovation. What world-changing technologies will emerge from humanity's latest challenges? How can the Caribbean capitalize on the metaverse, blockchain, hybrid work, and more? Join us at the RF Economic Outlook Conference under the theme Future Forces, World-Changing Ideas, where we will explore the future of work, investments, technology, and more. The journey begins on June 8th. Reserve your seat today at www.rfeoc.com.
We give you honor and praise, adoration and glory.
Radio Cayman.
Praise time.
Praise Him, praise Him. Come and let's praise the Lord. Come and let's praise the Lord. Praise Him in the morning and in the evening. Let's praise the Lord.
Praise time in the morning.
Praise Him, praise Him.
Weekdays 6 to 6:30 a.m.
Radio Cayman, waking you up.
Rock my soul in the blues of my favorite. Rock my soul in the blues of my favorite.
Praise time.
I know He cares. He'll always be there. Oh, yeah. Praise Him, praise Him, praise Him.
Praise time.
Set your clock for 6 a.m. or you will miss it.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks again for joining us. And I think, what better way of an introduction, and I tried to, and His Excellency said, hey, please remind, after the break to stay tuned. So we have he didn't say these words, but I thought it was implied, the Right Honourable. Good afternoon, my able friend, Mr. Leonard Dilbert. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I often find that it's part masking, but part to enjoy and celebrate life, the true laughter. And the respect that I have for the governor, the office of the governor, is respect that I would have for you and for others. And to be able to see the lighthearted jovialness that His Excellency displayed, like with you, should remind us that we're all flesh, blood, and bone. And at the end of the day, we can be serious about life, but we need not take ourselves too seriously. But I'm glad that you've taken a very serious approach to writing and to poetry, and through it, maybe we'll evoke much thought and inspire.
Well, hopefully. I would rather describe myself as being serious about being mischievous.
Now you see, now that was implied.
When it comes to the use of language, because a certain amount of irreverence, I suppose, is necessary. If you're going to come out of the maelstrom with your sanity, when you start diving into language use and what language means and where it comes from and all that, as we take it for granted. Right?
It's not just semantics.
Oh no.
And then we talk about the etymology of words, but even the gestures of a word as it's spoken. And then I certainly going to defer to you because I'm excited about this, and you know my penchant for language as well. We don't realize how much we communicate by not communicating.
Aye. Yes. One of the lessons I like to use as far as talking about poetry in particular is that you can learn a lot about what people mean from hearing how they speak without even knowing what they're saying. So if you, for argument's sake, are hearing muffled voices through a wall, you can generally figure out what sort of attitude there is or what sort of temper there is behind the words. And same thing with poetry. It's not necessarily what the words mean in the definitional sense. It also has to do with those sort of implied connotations that how to do partly with one part of language rubbing up against the other, has to do partly with how people share a common understanding of what things mean and what could be implied behind a common sounding phrase. And some of it has to do with your intonation, some of it has to do with your expression, some of it has to do with your body language, all sorts of things, right? Yeah. So it's not simple. Words are not language.
I always would
not the sum of language.
Not as Scripture talks about life and death is in the tongue, and words cut, they inspire, but they cut you down, and they're powerful. And I wonder to what extent, and not a linguist by any means, but we are so quick to dismiss not just the vernacular, the colloquialisms, the diction, the dialect, and all that, and yet we see that once that's lost,
this is a sore topic, you could say. Well, it's part of, I suppose, my sense of a poetic project to pay particular attention to our nation language. I'm using a phrase that I believe Seamus Heaney, the Irish poet, is credited with using. I'm sure other people have said it before him, possibly, but when he elaborated on it, he sort of claimed the expression because of the argument he made in favor of understanding what it means and its importance to people. The fact that the way people understand themselves can really only be deciphered if you understand their native tongue. And that native tongue, as in our case, could be English, as is claimed by many speakers in many parts of the world, but English that is modulated by our own experience and by our own development of language skills. And it's far more complex and far more important than we seem to think. It's the loss of that, I think, is part of what appears to be a loss of our soul. And I say that with some caution, in the sense that I wouldn't class myself as being an essentialist in that kind of area. That, or if you apply that essentialism to a political context, a nationalist in that sense. But it's necessary, nevertheless, to draw attention to the importance of the thing, even if you're not driving a particular agenda behind it. My only real agenda with that is to hurry up and discover all that we once knew as much as we can still access that while it is still possible. And in that respect, let me say from early on that there's no substitute for listening to the recordings of the memory bank at the archive. I've said that before on your show, I'm sure. But the phrase I use to people is that you will hear voices there that will never again be heard on this earth. Because those people were recorded once they reached age 70. And a lot of those recordings are now recordings of people who have long since deceased. And they took with them ways of speaking that you will never hear again. Because the world we are in now has already been modulated by the language uses that we are surrounded by all the time. And more as we are exposed to our devices constantly or to the mass media in one form or another. You're in the supermarket and you're hearing the radio or the TV or whatever. So pretty much everywhere you go, you're pressured by uses of language that in the end squeeze out your native tongue because they are not based on that. That is not the language form we're hearing.
Right.
And your brain becomes accustomed to it, and people around you becomes accustomed to it, so it becomes the lingua franca changes. Right? And it's inevitable in any place, but we've experienced a highly accelerated version of it. So the pressure on our native language is immense.
So it's almost like the harmonizing. I mean, we talk about tax codes and different things, but language now is becoming almost the same no matter where.
Well, there is a truth to that. English has become by far the dominant language of the globe, and it is considered more the lingua franca of the earth than any other language at this point. But what that means automatically is that many other languages have had to give way and make space for that. And the form of English will tend to be that which comes out of the voices that you hear most. Right? And those voices are either going to be at this point, the prominent social media voices or the mass media voices. And they have their particular language tradition, their particular training and so on, and that is how their language is brought across to everybody, wherever they are on the globe. And the more opportunity they have to expand around the globe, the more they will, because it's the nature of the business that they do. But it has a consequence.
Something that a good friend, 3 decades, I don't even want to acknowledge how long ago, her daughter was in one of the private schools being instructed by the predominant sort of population of the school, and remarked how, and this is a Caribbean national, as at that point been there for a long time, but the accent and the pace of speech is well almost like a Westphalian, but not quite. Getting there. and she was just making a comment, and I've never forgotten that. How her daughter, and then she started to listen to the daughter's classmates. They all sounded like the teacher. And I've been tracking that all through, and the people that we employ in our household, the people we work with, we're starting to see. That's why I said the harmonization. Everybody is starting to sound alike, and you get criticized. If I had Victoria Wheaton on the other day, and I say Vicky Wheaton, right? Now that's not disparaging. It's just that my own daughter would love to give me alliterations with W's and V's because she found that hilarious even to this day. And it wasn't for a tongue twister, but it was so beautiful. But we lose it. So there's a cost to that, I presume?
Well, there's a cost to anything that is generated out of the lives of a people. Any loss of that thing has a cost. In the case of the language change, confusion is one of the easiest sources. Confusion between people, but also confusion when it comes to interpretation of things that are in document form. Wherever you try to interface with any sort of institutional source, whether that's a private sector source or a public sector source, that the language of that documentation can bar many people from effective participation in whatever service that is, or whatever opportunity may present itself. And I'm pretty sure that if you were to track that, you'd find that that has gone in a steep upward curve. People's capacity to engage effectively with the documentation of various institutions around them. And it's part of the pressure that people are under currently in terms of effective language use. One of the reasons why we need to pay a lot more attention to it, and pay attention to it in a way that really has to do with the lives that people actually live, the language that they actually use. How do you really engage with them and reach them in a way that they become more flexible, understand the means to grow their own language skills, and become practiced in doing so. Those are things that we need to be engaging with on an urgent basis, given that whatever other subject a child may study in school, they're going to study that subject using language. Right? If it's physics, they're still going to be talking English to do physics. If it's maths, same way. Religious education, same way. So it's really difficult to overestimate how important language use is. And my particular concern with the writing of poetry, I suppose, comes partly with a respect for the way in which poetry is possibly, arguably, the most discriminating of the language skills, or the applications of language skills. And that particularity, that necessity to be as specific, as accurate as possible about whatever it is part of the attraction.
And this is, as I listen to you, I'm quickly taken back to high school English with Mr. Calvin Bromfield, and it wasn't just the vocabulary that he wanted us to develop. I'm grateful for that, but the essence of what you say, the import of words, and you can be verbose if you want, or you can have one word that would give multiple connotations or paint a word picture. But sometimes you use many words not to show off your intellect, but to be able to draw the reader into this scenery, this imagery, and language is so beautiful.
Yes. Potential.
Yeah. I don't think
there's lots of ugly language too.
There's and there's ugliness in beauty,
which is part of the reason to be so attentive to the development of language skills, that people really appreciate the difference and appreciate the power in the use of language one way or the other, either for good or ill.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to say early on is, well, first of all, let me pause. Because we dove right in the deep end, so to speak. But I really wanted to express my gratitude for being here. I think it's important that I say that for your willingness to allow me to champion the cause of poetry, as it were, coming through my own poetry practice. And I hope that we can make good use of the time, both on this occasion and. Should it be for me to say or you to say?
You can say you. We have the clear answer.
Yeah. I mean, what we talked about. What we talked about is having a series of possibly 8 sessions, like this one. Hopefully, without royal prerogative being exercised to take away part of my time next time. But I'll come back to that too. But no, it's. Without focusing on my own position in the scheme of things too much, if there was ever time to think about and talk about poetry, is now. The American poet William Carlos Williams used the expression that men die every day for want of it, for want of poetry. And I think you could use that expression in Cayman quite accurately right now. And opening up exactly what that infers is something that I hope will become a little bit more clear over the course of our sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say that for those who happen to be listening, I don't know whether it's 5 people listening or 500 or 5,000,
Mm-hmm.
but I hope that they are good listeners, because listening and speech obviously are partner exercises. Speech goes nowhere if there's no listener.
Mm-hmm.
Speech also means very little if there's no listener. It is between the speaker and the listener where meaning is created. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The understanding of what the speech means comes about, is mediated through the exchange between the speaker and the listener. And so we hope that those who are hearing are listening.
Mm-hmm.
As the good book said, those who have ears to hear, let them hear.
Yeah. And it's probably those who have hands to let them do good.
That too. That too.
All right, we do have the news break to take.
Yeah.
Now, when we come back, we want to invite the listeners to listen.
Yes.
Was it draw near and be attentive
Yes.
as they assemble thyself to their ears?
Aye.
All right, well, we have for me, the distinct honor and privilege of having, Mr. Leonard Dilbert as our guest, and as you referenced, a series of discussions, and I think they're going to unfold into some wonderful things. As one of our listeners shares, that's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Aye.
And when we come back from the break, we want you to be a part of our discussion. You're going to be encouraged, enthused, you're going to be motivated and inspired. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman. We've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
The proclamation of the official lighting of the beacons gets underway today in line with Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations at 2 p.m. The Caymanian Town Crier will undertake the proclamation in Hero Square. In international news, Britain pledged Thursday to send sophisticated medium-range rocket systems to Ukraine, joining the U.S. and Germany in equipping the embattled nation with advanced weapons for shooting down aircraft and destroying artillery. Western arms have been critical to Ukraine's success in stymieing Russia's much larger and better-equipped military during a war now in its 99th day, with fierce fighting underway for control of the Donbass, the country's eastern industrial region. A man who blamed a surgeon for continuing pain after a recent back operation bought an AR-style rifle and opened fires later after a Tulsa medical office, killing the doctor and 3 other people in an attack that ended with him taking his own life, police said Thursday. The gunman called the clinic repeatedly complaining of pain and specifically targeted the doctor who performed the surgery. That according to Tulsa Police Chief Wendell Franklin. And Americans may soon get a new COVID-19 vaccine option, shots made with a more tried-and-true technology than today's version. The big question, why should they care? After long delays, the Food and Drug Administration is expected to decide within weeks whether to authorize Novavax vaccine. It's late in the pandemic for a new choice, with about 3/4 of U.S. adults already vaccinated. Those are your latest headlines. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
I wonder where this one going? With this big old grown basket on his back? Let me go ask him. Bobo, where you got with that old grown basket?
Carrying news. Grand basket here full of news about Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
Oh, you turn news back now? I hear you there. So, tell me more now.
You gonna have to come to Hero Square, 2 p.m. sharp on Thursday, June the 2nd. If you want to hear, they want me to cry in town, they say.
What? You crying in town? Or you mean town crier?
Something like that. But you have to come to Hero Square at 2 p.m. sharp on Thursday, June the 2nd, if you want to hear.
Say no more, Bobo. I gotta be there.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips for all occasions and celebrations. Let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
If you care about your car's performance and fuel economy, you must fill up at Jose's Escape with the new Pure 93. Experts know that the higher the octane rating, the better your engine will perform. Pure 93 is the highest octane fuel available in Cayman. Protect your car against pre-ignition and engine knocks. Top up your tank now with Pure 93 at Jose's Rubis and enter to win an awesome track bike. But there's more. Jose's offers 2 lateral flow test kits for only $10. The best KN95 masks, 2 for $5. And 10 stylish black surgical masks are only $5. Share the love. Purchase Reflections gift certificates and enter to win the amazing Trek bike.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And as the governor said at the outset, this soggy Thursday, well, I think of it as a thoughtful Thursday. Very thankful indeed for the company of Mr. Leonard Dilbert. And I'm hoping, and especially now with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, with all that's unfolding in the world, that we would look as a region, but specifically as our nation, to our people. And celebrate them. And whether there's a form of public acknowledgement through international honors, or whether it is, to my mind, more importantly, through us respecting, valuing, loving, appreciating, sharing, and celebrating publicly our own people. And I say this carefully because I don't want to offend anybody. Not through the eulogy, right? That's nice for the family, and the person may or may not, know, but do it now. A friend shared the chocolate with me. Listen, just the act of going and saying, I know you like this kind in here, that is probably a greater gift than something posthumously. So with your presence there, I'm really grateful that you're taking time and encourage us to look at ourselves through language and look at the importance of our language as it impacts ourselves. Something I was sharing with you during the break, and hopefully I remember it correctly. We talk about the poet's soul, and there's a country song that I love, and the father talking to his daughter, and he says, not unless he has a poet's soul about her, it would be Suda. And then I think it was Emerson that talked about the poet being the knower, the doer, the sayer. Hopefully it was Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'm not going to pretend that I know that definitively, but I'm as close to 100% sure as one can be. But the poet, the knower, the doer, and the sayer. And if we don't record it and write it and we don't speak it clearly, it's going to be a challenge.
I have arguably a better one than the knower, the doer, and the sayer.
Okay.
I like the claim from Shelley that the poet is the unacknowledged legislator of the world. And
so let it be stated, yours is better than mine. I mean, bigger than mine.
Whatever, but
legislator of the world. Okay.
Legislator, yes, and that, the unacknowledged legislators of the world, and that I'm going to pick up on in a little bit. But I want to say something about how you get there in terms of why that unacknowledged legislation is important in the present context. I have a little play with words based around calling some what's happening here within our context as an islanding tendencies. Sort of playing with the phrase from John Donne about no man is an island, but I would challenge John Donne about that one. I think, in fact, every man is an island because none of us are totally noble to one another. Right? But the islanding tendency is meant to refer to a communal way of being. And I say it in a sort of metaphysical, very complex metaphysical sense. And I'll use a nice fat phrase to bolster that claim, that what we're talking about is a new global islanded imaginarium. So we speak as if we are a part of the wider world, and we speak as if our imaginarium, the way that we think of the world, all of the tools that exist within our imagination are accessible to our imagination, are in fact aware of and in tune with global activity. When, in point of fact, the numbers of edits that are involved to make the imaginarium that we do occupy actually work are many and manifold. Our way of engaging with the world is very heavily edited, and does not, for argument's sake, raise the question of free speech in any other than very closely defined kind of context. I would want to say that some of the things that I will say in the course of today and following sessions may raise some hackles, as they like to say, and may raise the question of whether I should be allowed to say some of those things, and whether that is really within the boundaries of free speech. But I think it's that constrained imagination, that constrained imaginarium is problematic for us, because you do not grow to your greatest potential if you are operating on that basis. And that is where your language use also becomes critical. If you're not equipped with the language to challenge that and to therefore be able to break out of that, it becomes really problematic. And I'll give you an example that we don't really deal fully and frankly with our history. Right? We dress up both our origin stories and the history that we're currently making and in our day-to-day lives. The breadth of cultures in these islands now represent to me a potential for some things in terms of social growth and individual potential being developed that we can't tap because we don't see those cultures around us in that way, that they represent that potential, and that what it could mean at the end of the day is a sort of multicultural realm of expression that would be the envy of the world in many ways. Not even, the question is not even really on the table that this is something that could be pursued, something that we ought to be thinking about at least. Why invite people here from all over the world, but then make no place really for the culture that they bring with them? And I think part of that comes from the sort of insecurity we feel about our own, and that insecurity is well placed because it's under severe threat. But to my mind, the two things, one doesn't close the other. In fact, the two things go together. I think we ought to champion our own, and then champion our own, say, yes, but we can welcome these as well. Right? And that is a multidimensional concept, the whole islanding concept, because it includes things like practical problems of food security, for argument's sake, and accepting that we are what we eat. You think about what we do eat and where it comes from and how it's handled and all those things. And you have to ask yourself the question whether it's any surprise that we have so much what the medical people call CNCDs, chronic non-communicable diseases, or rates of hypertension, diabetes, those non-communicable diseases that are considered to be cancers, etc., considered to be the from the lifestyle of the so-called developed world. That is basically what dominates our health profile. Tempered now by COVID and all of that, but the underlying health status of the people is dominated by those exposures. And increasingly, we are getting into mental health issues as well, which are in the same ballpark. So we really need to think about how we're going about the growing of the culture, and the language has a lot to do with it, in the sense that the capacity to comprehend those things, to be able to understand the language that is being used, so that you can look through the language of institutions, whether they're health or otherwise, whether they're merchants bringing goods to the island, and the arguments that they use to say that is more viable than relying on local production or whatever. All of those building blocks of how the society is made to run, all of those will have some sort of explanation, some sort of argument behind them. And if you don't have the capacity to pick the language apart and to see where it's not logical, it's missing something, etc., we are all going to suffer, and we are suffering as a result.
Well, as I listen to you, I'm reflecting on the notion of your reference free speech. We look at, as you said, things that we may say will be questioned. Well, why did you say that? Why were you allowed to say that in that particular setting? I think to parliamentary privilege and immunities, there are many who would say, well, why should they be immune? Why should they be allowed to say that in that space? And if you're not free, now think of self-censorship. We probably will refrain from saying certain things, writing certain things, because I think perhaps that's where the arts come handy, the poet as well as the calypsonian. There are certain things, but even increasingly so. I saw a joke the other day that said, isn't it strange that we get more accurate, tender, truthful news from our comedians than we do from our talking heads on the screen? And that says a lot. I mean,
yes, it tells you a lot. It tells you a lot, and it isn't surprising, because at the moment I think we are in a state globally of pretending that there is far more freedom and far more ability to grow, more opportunity to grow for people than there is, and that pretense is a very dangerous one, because the tools that are used are those same tools we've been talking about, those mass media tools, those social media tools, etc., that cause people to believe things. You hear things repeated enough by enough people, you go and say, well, 60 million Frenchmen cannot be wrong, as the saying goes. Right? That must be true. Or if everybody else says so, it must be true.
Or 60 million Frenchmen can be wrong 60 million different ways.
That is true too. But the saying goes, right? And a good dose of skepticism, of seeing the need for truth telling is really helpful to all of us.
So as I listen to you, you're talking about, as an example, the many different nationalities that are here. And as I listen, I'm thinking that there are differences in culture, nuances, differences in language and stuff. But increasingly, I'm finding that, in my own experience, there's a strong connection and connectedness to some. You relate to certain things. If he doesn't mind, for example, Ray Banker, some of the shows that we do, you look at the African words, how they've come across to us, and even in just on Grand Cayman specifically, the word honor, for instance, it's said differently in West Bay than it is said in Georgetown, and they're not that far apart. But there was a time when that divide may have been as far as east from west. Right? So with poetry and true poetry and the use of language, and perhaps, as you referenced, the abuse of language, the inspiring as well as the cutting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I suppose I should say that there's a substantial tradition behind the kind of practice that I am engaged in myself. And I think of people like George Orwell, who I saw a phrase recently in the London Review of Books that referred to George Orwell's work as dealing with the intertwining of the politics of nature and power. And that comment was made in relation to publication by an American author, Rebecca Solnit, who's written a book now called Orwell's Roses, talked about his passion for keeping roses, etc., etc. But the point being that Orwell had a lot to say about language, and both in fiction and non-fiction, language and the way it is used to basically fool people into thinking that life is one way when it's another, for getting people to accept being ruled in ways that they otherwise wouldn't. So propaganda is a term that he was very familiar with and had a lot of trouble with. And I personally think that there is room here now to have a real public discourse about the differences between public education and propaganda.
Yeah. Almost one and the same sometimes.
And well, they're not one and the same.
No,
That's
no,
the thing.
it's used today.
Well, people pretend that they're doing public education when what they're doing is propaganda. And that's how I would prefer to see it. But it's necessary because I think we get away with a lot in terms of the style of governance that we exercise. We get away with a lot based on the use of many propagandistic devices. And to a large extent, people persuade themselves that they're not doing anything wrong because this is the way it has been done before, etc., which can be good, but it can be very dangerous too. And I really strongly believe that, first of all, there's a huge lack of public education, and secondly, that the discussion about the differences between public education and propaganda, and why one is preferable to the other, why one is necessary and the other one is to be avoided, that's something that we should be talking about now.
Increasingly so.
Increasingly so.
Yeah. And as I listen to you, I mean, Orwell, I think if there's any sort of public published works, his words, his phrases have left an indelible. The way he's coined certain things, we use them now with our understanding the origin.
Yes.
We read his stuff.
Yes, and often taken out of context.
Often taken out of context.
And often used in the opposite way from what he might have intended.
Yeah. I mean, if there is one book that we all should read, it's only a few pages long. Animal Farm. It's a quick read. And my daughter read it early, and it's my favorite. It's probably hers, and we had a discussion. But I want to share that to ask ourselves as adults, whether the parent in the adult sort of scenario or the teacher specifically in the classroom. When are we going to allow our children through language, those that have that propensity and have been encouraged to develop, to be able to express a thought, an opinion that may be separate and distinct, critiquing something? And I ask that to share, as you were saying, no propaganda and public education isn't the same, but we seem to intertwine them as if they're one and the same. And because the information has come from an official source, therefore it must be accurate and it must be, the thing to be followed. Propaganda was only what was spread in World War II by one side, not the other.
Propaganda tends to be caricatured, and in the course of setting up the caricature, you create an enemy that is easy to destroy, but which at the same time is not the actual enemy. Everybody will see it as that because you painted this picture of the by means of this caricature. But the release from that, the escape from that, the way of gaining freedom from the reach of that kind of use of that kind of tool, which we all as citizens need to practice doing. That is where the language skills become important, and that is where specifically making room for poetry in your life becomes necessary. And it's to do with the individual, it's to do with the family, it's to do with the nation, it's to do with the world. Because the job that poetry does in enlivening the spirit, in causing you to question your disposition towards the world that you're in, towards yourself, the things that you think are true about yourself, and you get shocked in reading something. Say, oh, there's something. It makes me think of something, or it makes me realize something that I was thinking or was feeling, or a position that I held on things that I really need to look at again. And so it can cause that sort of searching of yourself, but it can also cause that kind of searching of the world around you, whether it's to do with your appreciation of the natural world or it's to do with your human associations, both of which become important in terms of governance, and the natural world and your orientation towards it becomes ever more important in the world we live in now, the world of climate change and all that. And that's part of my interest in the Orwell thing, because of those dual interests, and in a way being ahead of his time again, in terms of the attention to nature.
As we speak to Selena Dilbert, and we look at writing, but poetry in particular, the psalmist has a lot, and when what I do realize is that we tend at times to overinflate our own intellect. I think the only thing is, the only thing we know is what we don't know what we don't know. And so last evening, after following a wonderful discussion, it was the first time that I think I understood Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet in the light of Twelfth Night. Twelfth Night is my favorite play. And here are these two. Why would they do what they did? And I looked at it in relation to, I said, Twelfth Night. Two very distinct plays. Some would say, how can you compare them? You can contrast them easily. But I saw not just symbolism, I saw a strong correlation between the two. And it's got me to thinking, not as want to be intellect, but just as a person that is living, breathing in that time, and feeling, sensing, needing, wanting. What is it about us then that we're unwilling to be publicly critical in terms of critiquing things constructively? We censor. We've doing it now. We said it earlier. Well, I don't know how people would this. Shackles was the word we used earlier. And yet, there are people who say, man, I wish I had the courage to say what he did. Or he does say it. He's flying close to the sun today. So
yes, well, you will find, I believe, that is a very variable beast. That it very much depends on the social / cultural context that you're in. One of the challenges here is that we seem to have accepted a set of restrictions, a set of confinements on our critical capacity that is a bit worrying, more than a bit worrying, actually. That can really only go one way, and that is not a good place. And we, partly because those in charge of governance have never really seen the value of a proper public education program, whether it's to do with actual specific policy, to do with legislation, to do with longer term objectives, the desires that people have. It seems to me that if you put yourself in the place of being a representative of the people, one of the things that you should really find it an obligation on yourself to do is to ask people a couple of questions like, have you ever really had a dream for your life? What is it that you would have wanted to do? Had you been given all opportunity, had the money to do it, etc.? What would you have done with yourself if you could have? And those questions are not necessarily going to be followed or meant to be followed by the answer, well, I'll fix that for you, right? Because I would want to discourage that. That is our current mood as far as the representative is concerned. The representative tends to see themselves as being the patron of the constituent. If you need this, I will try to find this and get this for you, to an extent. But that's a different thing. That's a different thing from understanding people's deep-seated aspirations, what they could have done with themselves had they the opportunity. Because it seems to me that if you begin to understand that, begin to map that in your constituency, then you begin to get a sense of, well, what is it I should really be trying to do for these people? Because surely the thing that a human being must want at the end of the day is to have some understanding that what they ever dreamed about doing and the way they dreamed about being can be realized in some way, whether it's to do with just simply seeing something that they can identify with and say, well, that brings into life the kind of thing that I want to see and I can attach to that. Or it's actually doing it yourself.
Yeah. What was it in 12th night? I know not what and fair to find. Mine eye too great a flatterer for my mind. But it's all faith, right? And I'm wondering as we go into the break, if it's two things. We go to cemeteries and we say, oh, look at this vast potential untapped, unfulfilled. But is it then, and maybe we'll ask this question and let it resonate with some of us, that thing that we would be had we had all the resources and the support and the nurturing, is it that we no longer have that because in our own education, upbringing, socialization, we're no longer encouraged to dream, to be creative, to be expressive. We're all to be bots. All right, when you come back from the break, please stay tuned.
Subway makes it easy for you to stay on top of your health and wellness goals with our Fresh Fit menu options. Choose from 5 Fresh Fit Subway sandwiches with only 450 calories or less per 6-inch sub. Turkey breast, veggie, oven roasted chicken, Black Forest ham, sweet onion chicken teriyaki, or make your 6-inch Fresh Fit sub into a salad or wrap prepared with fresh vegetables. For a full menu and nutritional information, visit subway.ky. Subway, eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
As the longest established pensions plan in the Cayman Islands, the Chamber Pension Plan looks forward to delivering the same strong performance for our members, but now in a new location. As of March 1st, our new pensions operation office is located at 14 Saturn Close, Eastern Avenue, the same building as our new administrator's agent, Saxon Administration Limited. A dedicated and experienced team will be assigned to the Chamber Pension Plan. If you would like to join or request further information, visit chamberpension.ky, and for information as it happens, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Email admin@pensions.ky or call 745-7630. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. New location, new administrator's agent, new customer service, same strong performance.
I've got some beautiful clothes
I know just where they go, Puritan Cleaners.
Puritan Cleaners, now using the most popular and eco-friendly cleaning solvents. 2 convenient locations to serve you: Savannah Countryside and Eastern Avenue, Georgetown. Drive-through, rain or shine, free pickup and delivery services available. Call Puritan Cleaners, 949-7104. Also ask about our in-house discounts. Puritan Cleaners, you feel good when you look good.
You know the easiest way to get free food? No, not go steal your neighbor's mango, but plant a tree. Yeah, for real. More trees, more food, less grocery bills. To celebrate Her Majesty Queen Platinum Jubilee, come plant a tree for the Jubilee. Yeah, we need you. Yes, you. Make sure you leave your green mark on the Cayman Islands. Perhaps a mango tree, a legitimate tree, even a little bit of coconut or cabbage. Is it time we all started eating off the land again? Register your tree and leave your green print at www.gov.ky/National Tree Planting. Or make sure you follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Plant a tree for the Jubilee. Proudly brought to you by the Cayman Islands Government, Ministry for Sustainability and Climate Resiliency. Let's green Cayman now.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And thanks too. I know Miss Susan is a budding poet as well, and her publications, her stories, and recently you've seen her videos. If you haven't, you need to hook her up, man, to have the excellent company of Mr. Leonard Dilbert. As we talk about language and poetry, and the way poetry allows us to convey certain things. I don't want to go on a tangent, but you inspire me to think. You spark within me. And I'm thinking to the young, child learning to speak. Those initial cooings and babblings and the like. And then as the child develops and the language skills come in and different things. Now, a number of things are evident. Perhaps the environment will help the child to develop a certain way. Perhaps even I'll use the word and you feel, correct me, but the accents, the people around. We all heard a joke about the parents that adopted a child from a foreign country and decided that they were going to learn the language so that they would know what the child was talking when the child grows up.
Yes.
It's my joke for today.
Yeah. Okay. Good one.
But language, I mean, it is powerful.
Yes. Well, since you reference that way of approaching language, let me just throw out some of those sort of regular pieces of terminology that the linguists use in relation to various ways of classifying how language is used. They talk about standard form of language. They talk about patois, pidgin, what else? Creole, jargons,
colloquialism.
Yeah. There are all sorts of terms depending on what piece of language use you're talking about, or what style you're trying to convey, what the boundaries are around it, sort of thing. And they all have their uses in terms of gaining an understanding of how what you're hearing it represents the particular language that the person is using or playing off of. And the fact is that if you looked at what's happening here now, if a linguist looked at what's happening here now, you'd have a lot of fun compiling a study of current language use. But it's true that the problem with the language use in many ways is that it is a very sort of top-down kind of use at this point. And it goes with our governance system, which is quite top-down as well. We pride ourselves on having a viable democracy and all that sort of thing, but our exercise of democratic freedoms tends to have a lot to do with quadrennial vote, and thereafter most people don't actually have anything to do with the system.
Mhm.
They might, some of them, a few of them I would say probably in proportion, might pressure a specific point about a specific thing somewhere during that 4-year period or whatever, but there's no sort of active citizen role per se that is ongoing for most people, other than the kinds of charter work they might do, that sort of thing, which is not directly speaking to the governance system. That's a support part of the system. But my difficulty with all that is that as long as we continue the way we are, what we're doing is avoiding dealing with certain legacies that we have to face. And part of that failure to deal with those legacies is that it leaves, I mean, use a strong language and say, it leaves sort of poison in the blood. And it comes about from the absence of a communal, cathartic encounter with your legacy. In our case, part of that legacy is the legacy of slavery, which is not a subject that is part of our common discourse for many good reasons, but some bad ones too. And the peculiar career that Cayman has adopted for itself as a venue for state-sponsored capitalism. Those are two prominent parts of our legacy that have been very difficult for us to deal with, and we tend to skirt widely around them, right? And have all sorts of prohibitions in our attitudes and our language and everything else against discourse that surrounds those things. Part of the problem with that, apart from how it affects those of us who are adults living with it now, is that the young people essentially being asked to embrace a propagandistic version of the truth for the actual truth. And the victimization that causes, I would say, affects both the sense and the sensibility of a young person. So their minds become either numbed to certain things, or they become open to potential for radicalization, because they go overseas and they become exposed to various things and say, but this is true about us too, so why does nobody tell us that? Why don't we ever talk about that? And that radicalization occurs, and some people live with it and express it in various ways, and other people choose not to come back to the island. We haven't had yet the kind of radicalization that causes people to bomb places and all sort of thing, God forbid. But there's a danger in not telling young people the truth. There's a real danger of them becoming radicalized because they see what you've been telling them as lies or as half the truth or whatever, and they become disenchanted with the whole society as a result.
But even that word that you use, right? We hear it primarily in Western media in a negative connotation relative to, and even with like extremists and fundamentalists. And I remember once in the church setting, having a discussion, and Jesus was termed as a radical, and the root of the word radical is at a time not a bad word, right? But yet today, if probably not unlike the 70s as well, I can imagine our university students coming back, being introduced to our world, like as seafarers who've gone the globe, being introduced to our world, and they go, wow, they have a renewed sense of what it is, a purpose, but they also understand that things exist beyond their small square. So then, with that in mind, where are we in ensuring that this public discourse doesn't become disinformation? This information that we are sharing is accurate.
You hear my take on it. I think we're in a lot of problems, to tell the truth. And it's difficult to have this kind of conversation in the sense that the instant that you attempt to sustain this kind of conversation, typically people respond by questioning, well, can you not appreciate the good that we have here? Can you not appreciate how good we have it, etc.? And I think that's missing the point completely. And I'm not by any means not grateful for all that we have. What I am not grateful for, though, is some of the ways in which we sustain having what we have.
Yeah.
Some of the ways we got to it in the first place.
The justification for it, huh?
Well, yeah, the justification for it, the ways that we truncate, the ways that we edit, the ways that we censor, etc. And it becomes ingrained. You do it to yourself. You don't allow yourself to speak about certain things, to raise certain questions, etc., because it's not done.
Yeah.
And I find that to be how real dangers. There are real dangers associated with that.
But then does that come from publications and discussions like this to the truths, or from a people when they've gotten to a certain space, maybe they found something has transpired and but it's stuck in my craw, as we say, and just to get off my chest. Is that what it, or as it is that we're lacking that social ingrained ethos that this is what we need to be because this is what is the truth?
Yeah, these things are developed with practice.
Okay.
And an individual having that feeling and acting on that basis has validity for that individual, and it may carry a lesson for one or two other people around him, and it may have a larger impact because that thing may be a change in the legislation, for argument's sake, may cause that person to be motivated to push somehow to get legislation change or change a policy or whatever the case may be, and it has a wider sort of social impact and wider impact in at least a small way on the governance of the community. But for a larger, more effective, longer-lasting kind of impact, to my mind, you have to carry more people with you. And there is a space that exists outside of the strictly political realm of electoral politics, etc. Space for public discussion where people can be persuaded to think differently about things and to move in a different direction, to have develop different aspirations and judge things around them on a different basis. The preachers in churches do it all the time.
Yeah.
They rely on the possibility that can be done. But of course that is couched in a very specific way, and I have not found a willingness for that to be expanded to take on Christ radicalism.
No, as you said, I'm thinking and I'm glad you referenced the churches because words like, that's a charismatic person, politician or preacher, sometimes one and the same, right? I think back to Nelson Mandela when he would share the importance of the populace to be able to stand together. You're not fighting people, you're fighting the system. And in this instance, you're looking not just to the future, but you're trying to preserve something that can be shared, enjoyed, and embrace that unifying thread amongst us. I like your when you first opened the comments that we're inviting people here, so therefore we should be making place for them. Now, is it, back to language, is it that we're not mindful? Is it that there's a deliberate social engineering, or worse yet, inadvertent, where the imposition of people, of practices, and sometimes even policies that worked well elsewhere, superimpose on an already established system of people, is now not only displacing but creating disquiet. So,
well, that is possible, that is arguable, and these are the kinds of things that tend to be talked about among people, but not become part of an open public debate. And unfortunately, so I would say, I think there's a real place for taking that on. I can't personally understand a community working with in excess of 100 nationalities as within a small physical space but yet not appreciating, not having exposure to the range, the wealth of that comes from the background of that variety of people that represent a sort of United Nations kind of potential for global understanding, enrichment of our own culture. I don't get it, and I don't see how it can be the option of choice for the future. But but let me. I don't know. You have time for me to read something?
We want to take the break, and then we'll come back. We're speaking to Mr. Leonard Dilburn, and this is fascinating. And I think as we look at it, increasingly, we may come away with a much more informed perspective. As he will share some of his readings, please join us after the break.
I wonder where this one going with this big old grown basket on his back. Let me go ask him. Bobo, where you got with that old brown basket?
Carrying news. Grand basket here full of news about Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
Oh, you turn news back now? I hear you there. So, tell me more now.
You gonna have to come to Hero Square, 2 p.m. sharp on Thursday, June the 2nd. If you want to hear, they want me to cry in town, they say.
What? You crying in town? Or you mean town crier?
Something like that. But you have to come to Hero Square at 2 p.m. sharp on Thursday, June the 2nd, if you want to hear.
Say no more, Bobo. I gotta be there.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences. This October, discover Peru with the Chamber Travel Club. Experience Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas and recognized as one of the wonders of the world. Explore the Spanish and Incan cultures and civilizations from Lima to Cusco to Aguascalientes in 10 days and 8 nights. Reserve your space for this trip of a lifetime by June 3rd to receive the early bird special and free Sacred Valley tour. Visit caymanchamber.ky or call 949-8090 for further details. This October, discover Peru with the Chamber Travel Club. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Wayne Porter will be taking appointments from May 30th to June 2nd and June 7th to 11th at his Crew Road Clinic. Appointment slots are limited. Whether you're seeking advanced skincare, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email dr.portercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020 to book your appointment today. That is 946-9020.
Stay clean, stay safe, hey man. Reflections sells gallons of sanitizer for only $25. Buy 2 clip-on sanitizers for just $5. Reflections has the best KN95 masks or reusable cloth masks, and you can get 2 for only $5. Blue surgical masks and face shields are available for children and adults, as well as 10 and 50 packs of black surgical masks. Volume discounts available at Reflections. Jose's Rubus, Reflections Hemp and Tobacco, all 5 Liquor for Less locations, and Food for Less open 24 hours every day. Don't miss the Liquor for Less incredible priced better markdown. Hundreds of fine from $2.99. Cases of ice cold below wholesale prices. Save $10 off liters of absolute exclusively at Liquor for Less. Prices so low we can't say them on the radio.
We are now in the hurricane season, and to survive a hurricane, you need to be informed. If you have been informed by official sources that a hurricane is approaching the Cayman Islands, and you live in a low-lying area that is prone to flooding or near the beaches, which may be swept by high tides or storm waves, please seek a safe place and high ground. If the only way for you to get to a safe place is a road that is also likely to be flooded During a storm, please leave home early. Don't run the risk of being stranded. This has been a public service announcement from your community station, Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks very much for joining us, and thanks to Leonard Dilbert for sharing with us. And you know, as I listen to you, it's not just my great deference to you, to your work. It's my respect for us as a people, but my genuine appreciation to try to dig into who we are, learn more. Not only that I would know more, but I can share more with all and sundry. And language is something that we talk about semantics. You know, we get a crop in it. We talk about dialect at times, and I remember being in a discussion not long ago where the fellow used a word, and I thought, "Oh, it's interesting." Now it wasn't in English, but I could see from his expression when the word was used, and then he stopped and he looked at me and I said, "Well, I don't speak that language. I don't know." And then he started to say it to me, and it was one of some countries have different dialects, and he said, "Well, that word could mean this or it could mean that." Two very, very distinct things. Which one is it? And I said, "Well, you speak the language, you better ask now, because he's either telling you to go left or to go right. You better know, right?" But we don't do that, and that is amongst language. So I wonder what we're doing in a lack of communication, appreciation, but also ensuring that we preserve it and promote it.
Well, I want to end with a little homework exercise, but we're not there yet. Right?
Okay.
So I don't know. I think I have time to read this
please.
little piece, and this is just a bit of relief, I suppose, from the current kind of discussion. Okay, this little piece is called "In Coral's Classrooms." And it's one of those where the title kind of reads right into the text. But I just want to introduce a phrase first. As a phrase, Sturm und Drang, which is a German phrase. I'm probably not saying it correctly, but a German phrase that means basically storm and fury sort of thing. So really heavy stuff going on. That's used in the context. In Coral's classrooms, many little mouths glub, glub, and glub, breathing out. We are not barrier, we are fringing. And we do not bar, we fringe. We cast rocky rings around the islands. The waves say they will forever meet us head on and make our underwater work visible in massed laces of the whitest, frothy Sturm und Drang. We in Coral School drink up a constant stream of the Caribbean's innumerable secrets and whisper of it sotto voce into the shallows. We can all see our own futures rolling onward, first as gravel rock reducing, then as grains of sand. Crack open any sand grain, and the first thing to escape will be the three previous ideas of heaven as the grain changed. The one we emerged were let loose from, the one we practiced believing, and the one we played with the idea of exactly as we wanted. From whence we were reminded. It's hard to learn to be generous when you feel you've nothing to give. This all was reported as taught the same year the Poncianas were ashamed to flame, their question being, who would want to have any more light? To see any more of what?
In Coral's classroom.
Yeah.
I the imagery is vivid. I like the idea that, I was just asking someone the other day as a geographer, they borrow reefs for fringing, right? Because we hear it often.
That's what they say. That's what they call it, yeah. They call them fringing reefs and not barrier reefs.
And like so much though, look at our advertising. look at the way we not just speak and misspeak, but misname.
Oh yes, there's a lot of that. Yeah. A lot of that's going on. A lot of things are being renamed. Like Smith's Cove, which we all knew as Smith's Barcadere, and Barcadere has a particular historical context, right? It's freighted with a specific historical meaning. There's a practice associated with the place, and if you change that word, you edit that word out. You've essentially cut out a piece of your historical understanding. Boom, just like that.
Look at and for me, it's the public beach, right? It's not 7 Mile Beach public beach, not public 7 Mile. It's the public beach. That was the first public beach. It was a phenomenal undertaking by the JCs of the day, right? The name changed. I don't care if you put a sign there. It's Bormanu, not Batamanu. Right? But look at other places that have disappeared, not just off the map, but out of our own collective memories. Where's Tim's Point, right? You know, you talk about Barcadere. Uncle Bob's Barcadere was... Uncle Harvey and them, that was an important part for people to come in. That outcropping of conch shells meant something. Even if it's a reminder of a practice that should be discontinued.
And it's not only practice, it's a connection. It's a connection because the word isn't an English word, right? So it's therefore not coming out of our own language history. It comes out of an association with another culture, right? And but that again is part of the historical meaning that you lose if you just simply lose the word.
But isn't that then on us as a collective to ensure that one, we're conscious of it, but then we also do all we can to not just preserve it, put it in an archive somewhere is nice, but what is the good of your great
revitalize it.
All right, we got a news break to take. We've got something very special. Can we tell them what it is, Miss Susan? We can. She says, I can. So you're going to have to listen for what it is, right? You probably can guess. And, it's going to come up in a few seconds from now.
All right.
Part of our Jubilee celebrations.
All right.
And, I think it's quite fitting. I wonder if the garb should have included, the jester's hat, but maybe not.
I'm dressed for Jubilee right now.
So we're going to take this from Miss Susan. All right, stay tuned.
Radio Cayman,
the voice,
the heart, the soul of the Cayman Islands.
We now present the reading of the Jubilee Proclamation.
Today, in our nation and throughout the Commonwealth, we are celebrating our glorious Queen Platinum Jubilee. Elizabeth, the second of that name, our most beloved sovereign, and the head of the Commonwealth for 70 years. We opt that this should be the platinum anniversary of her coronation. Platinum, the most noble of metals, more precious even than gold. And so it is in our honor of this unique occasion that beacons will be lit this evening throughout the United Kingdom, the Channel Islands, the Isle of Man, and the UK territories, and all the capital cities of the Commonwealth. Let it be known in proclaiming this tribute to Her Majesty the Queen on her Platinum Jubilee that we are one nation and one Commonwealth. Here on Grand Cayman, the beacon lighting will be held at the castle at Pedro St. James at 9:10 p.m. and all are invited to witness this historic moment on the Cayman Islands government channels, TV and YouTube. All residents on Cayman Brac can view the beacon lighting at Columbus Garden starting at 7 p.m. Tune in one, tune in all. On a hair, the beacon lighting is tonight. God save the Queen.
You've just heard the reading of the Jubilee Proclamation as we continue to pay tribute to Her Majesty the Queen on her Platinum Jubilee with a number of activities scheduled for this weekend, including the lighting of the beacon, which can be heard on Radio Cayman at 9:10 tonight and can be seen on the Cayman Islands Government YouTube and cable channels. The celebration will move to Cayman Brac on Saturday. A service of thanksgiving will take place on Sunday at Elmsley Memorial United Church at 5 p.m., which will also be aired live on Radio Cayman, and the Queen's Birthday Parade, Garden Party, and Fireworks Display will be on Monday, June 6th, starting at 5 p.m.
Shaken yet standing firm. This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news. Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
The Public Health Department reports 167 cases of COVID-19 on Wednesday, with 5 of those in the Sister Islands. There are currently an estimated 1,423 active cases in the Cayman Islands, with 6 people getting treatment in the hospital. The 7-day rolling average for June 1st is 72. In international news, Queen Elizabeth II stepped gingerly onto the Buckingham Palace balcony Thursday, drawing wild cheers from the tens of thousands who came to join her at the start of 4 days of celebrations of her 70 years on the throne. Elizabeth, who became Queen at 25, is Britain's longest reigning monarch and the first to reach the milestone of 7 decades on the throne. Africa must be part of a united global fight against monkeypox, the World Health Organization's Africa office said Thursday, as countries in Europe, the U.S., and elsewhere respond to unusual outbreaks of the disease. WHO Africa Director said in an online briefing, "We must have one connected global response to monkeypox to avoid it becoming endemic in more countries." More than 500 cases have been reported, many apparently tied to sexual activity at 2 recent raves in Europe. No deaths have been reported. A New York appeals court upheld Harvey Weinstein's rape conviction and 23-year prison sentence Thursday, rejecting the movie mogul's claims that the judge at his landmark #MeToo trial prejudiced him by allowing women to testify about allegations that weren't part of the criminal case. The ruling by a 5-judge panel in the state's Intermediate Appeals Court affirmed one of the highest profile verdicts to date in America's reckoning with sexual misconduct by powerful figures, an era that began with a flood of allegations about Weinstein. Those are your latest headlines. I'm Shana Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
We wanna go and dally.
Backyard, Caymanian and Jamaican cuisine. 7 Mile Beach might have changed, but Backyard is bringing it back. True Caribbean food in the heart of 7 Mile, just like Mama's home cooking. Brown stew snapper, Cayman-style beef, jerk chicken, turtle stew, and the delicious list goes on. Dine in, take out, or order with the Bento app. Backyard, Caymanian and Jamaican cuisine, 269 West Bay Road, or call 746-4603. Backyard, daily lunch specials, and the one-of-a-kind Fun Day Sunday live music brunch.
Backyard.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Subway is serving up a special new sauce, bursting with flavor in every bite. The new Savory Collection is a tropical sweet and spicy sauce made with a combination of spices, habanero peppers, thyme, onion, black pepper, ginger, citrus juices, and molasses.
So good. Wow. Sensational. Delicious.
Subway's savory collection pairs perfectly with our oven-roasted chicken or steak sub. Savor the flavor. For a limited time, only at Subway. Subway. Eat fresh.
Join us on June 8th for the annual RF Economic Outlook Conference, where speakers include Dex Torok, executive at Facebook and Google, John Cidilettis, geopolitical consultant to the U.S. Department of State, Keith Herman, serial tech entrepreneur and blockchain expert, and global innovation strategist Sean Kanungo. Registration is now open. Find out more at rfeoc.com.
Join us in celebration for Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The Cayman Islands is excited to be hosting a variety of free, family-friendly activities throughout the long weekend you won't want to miss. So many activities to celebrate together. For more information on the upcoming Queen's Platinum Jubilee events, visit www.gov.ky/Jubilee.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us in the studio, Mr. Leonard Dilbert. And as I listen and reflect and increasingly, think to some of the things you shared, it almost seems if you think your German is bad, my Latin is probably worse, right? Who's guarding the guards? And we know the phrase. I use it often, and some of the things are right. But is that part of the challenge that we are failing to appreciate that true poetry? What you said, the poet is the unacknowledged legislator of the world. So we're failing to appreciate the importance of the public commentary and the working of the arts and through the arts. I think to the Calypsonian, different from the Soca, that the messaging is there. But then we're also unwilling to put in place the necessary safeguards to come back to what we talked about, the free speech, the ability to say something for the governance model to ensure that in the model, through the use of language, and not so much the interpretation of it, say in court, where using the judge's rules. Well, this must mean this because these are the to let it be that free, accessible thing that is expressed freely.
Well, there's a lot that could be said and should be said about free speech, and I think we are under the illusion that we are actually practicing free speech. I would disagree. I think there are many constraints that people experience that, I should say, make that freedom of speech much less than it could and should be. But the point of the unacknowledged legislator of the world thing is that partly the fact that the poet keeps open to people ways with language that enable them and empower them to think differently and to feel differently. And when you can reach people in that way, it empowers them to some degree to have a bit more of an independent life and a bit more of the wherewithal to come out of themselves into the world, as it were. Quick comment about the poem I just read in Coral's classrooms. There was another phrase in there, another foreign language phrase, sotto voce, which, as you know, is like speaking in a silent voice, basically mouthing something without saying out loud. I should have said that initially, but I think it speaks for itself sufficiently. It doesn't take much away. But the meaning I wanted to say was that in case it wasn't obvious to anyone, that the poem uses one of the old tricks of personification. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the coral is not actual coral, obviously. Right? Coral doesn't do all that.
You sure?
Doesn't say all that. Well, literally, in many ways, it does.
Yeah.
Right? And it only works insofar as you can parallel the speech and the attitudes of the coral as it is described with the life of the coral, right? What actually happens to it. That's what, on a metaphorical level, makes it work. But the personification is, in some ways, more important in the sense that I'm using the coral as a mouthpiece, as a way of saying something else. And that something else comes to its head, as it were, in the latter two stanzas. The challenge that it is possible to be in a situation where you can't learn generosity because you have nothing. Right? And that's a serious place for people to be.
You can't pour from the empty cup.
Exactly.
Mm.
But it's not even just a matter of pouring. You can't want to pour.
Yeah.
Right? And if you don't have that disposition to be generous to others, it's a very serious state of affairs. That kind of generosity I'm talking about is the generosity that's based on the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Right? That's an act of generosity. Right? Because what would you do for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Good things, not true?
Love yourself I love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
But even
I want to keep the mic a little bit just to say that the final stanza that talks about the Poncianas being ashamed of flame, and their question being, who would want to have any more light? To see any more of what? It seems to me that if you don't get that on first reading, you may want to read it again, because what I understand by that myself, somebody else might understand it a different way, is it must be a pretty grim situation if you, that's enough light, please. I don't really want to see any more. Right? And we know that in that sort of context, that sort of linguistic context, when you're talking about seeing anymore, you're not literally talking about, well, I don't want to see another microphone, so I want the light to stop here. We're talking about the situation of your life. Yeah? So I just want to say those things because I think it's necessary, because I suspect that a good part of our listenership may not have a lot of familiarity with the stylings of contemporary lyric poetry, which is what I think I'm doing, or the sort of model that I'm playing off from, and some explication, some explicatory kinds of commentary, I think would be is helpful.
Always is, even if we look at the published works of centuries old, right?
Yes, you have to talk your way into it or out of it. But I want again to hog the microphone a little bit longer. To say this, that before we finish, what I would like to do is read one more piece that I think is going to be a little bit more contentious, a little bit more provocative, and just say a little bit about the programming for the series.
Of course. Yeah.
And thirdly, to leave the listenership with a little piece of homework. Yeah? Okay, so maybe I could just slide right into the reading. That might be the best thing. Okay. This piece is a bit longer and, as I say, maybe a little bit more contentious, but so be it. Let's have some fun.
Okay.
It's called Concrete Boating.
Okay.
A boat made of concrete may float once it hollows out enough air and holds it in its own solid pocket. This is inspired Fidelish design. That sounds better said in the street Cuban spoken by the then future ambassador to Mexico. Didn't you see him on TV in the official mansion? How much power may one man safely crave? You have to ask these questions in a poem. They'd laugh you out of court with that one. But I'm leading up to something, you know that. To say it's because poetry is ambrosia, is the food of love, and love, dear heart, is to power the way methadone is to heroin addiction. So let's go at this again. Why are so many men so addicted to power? Can't still the tongue in their heads, got to have the last word. Can't keep the zipper zipped on their pants, nor stick to the bit of coin in their own wallets. Can't stop lying and stealing, or craving to beat the liar and thief, and add the strength of his own cravings to theirs like a real vampire. Ask the once and future ambassador to Mexico. Once I held a fainting economic migrant in my arms. The test is that a true refugee will shrink inside their clothes when so held, be like a babe in the woods or in a reed boat/bassinet that floats. When this doesn't happen, she or he'll be heavy, brother, more than most of us can bear up under, even those ones who once made concrete boats float. Every time I said I wish I knew the answer, and noticed how close they were to us, our own blood in their cranked concrete skiffs, this one would say, read this, poetry from the Bible, and be comforted. And I'd try, but church, that's church to me and you, denies it's that simple to be saved. How many convertibles would you exchange for my poem? You have a fair argument there. It doesn't even rhyme. Isn't that why we sing a song? Forsooth, for soothing of the savage beast, thanking David. Oh, that's a different kind of power. One you can't really call that. It's not yours, but given. To turn your agony and your aging into a confession of love. It won't hurt for you to know this coincidence, that this was written in the May month under the last quarter of a moon that had not long been totally eclipsed, and turned red to know that about itself. The same month the word spread that the sky is falling, but only if we believe the sky is made of dust, has turned to dust, and is no longer to be blue. That's what power can do for you.
You know, I wonder sometimes if it's my own interest, if it's the way we read into things, and many of what you shared sort of resonates now. For the listener, they would appreciate that this is one that probably wasn't penned very long ago, given the celestial sort of passage, and even now.
The month of May.
The month of May, but even more so the eclipse and how the Sahara does. Right? But I wonder how many of us realize that, but how much of what was written or we will sort of reflect on.
Well, that's what the listener does, right? And that's goes back to my point about the fact that the meaning, what the import of the poem is a construct between the reader and the listener, and the reader either being the writer in this case or not, but it is the hearing or the reading of the poem plus the listening to it. And if someone is reading somebody else's poem, obviously they're reading and listening at the same time. In that, as you know, the way language works, even reading silently, you're hearing the words. Right? It's that funny business of literally being able to hear in your own head, right? and it is the way, it is the part of how language works that makes it possible to have language doing what it does, for people to be able to actually understand each other, and why we have such powerful images like the Tower of Babel, where people can't do anything together because they can't understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They literally don't speak the same language. So that was one of my missions, to read that.
Yeah.
Maybe I should speak to the homework bit, because the programming is, well, let me just say what I would hope to do on our next session, or next couple of sessions, would be to talk about poetry practice, poetry career, and poetry place, and to talk a little bit about Bloom's Day, which I think is the 100th anniversary of Bloom's Day. Bloom's Day being the day that Leopold Bloom, who is the hero of James Joyce's Ulysses, which is one of those sort of novels that changed literature forever. They celebrate Bloom's Day as the day that the novel was set on. It was set on the 14th of June, and the publication originally was 1922. So I think this year would be 100 years since. But in various places, there are readings of Ulysses on every Bloom's Day on the 14th of June. And I would acknowledge it this year in the course of our session. But the poetic project of the whole exercise, from the first word to the last, and into the silence afterwards, will be enhanced by some of the contributions coming from other persons. And I'm thinking one of those contributions might be a little bit piece of homework to deal with, the bird we call Arnal, old Arnal. I got interested in old Arnal and looked it up a little bit, and I made a couple of interesting discoveries. First of all, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that that's our name for the bird. But the scientific name for it is Crotophaga ani. And interestingly enough, the Crotophaga comes from the Greek, and it means tick eater, eater of ticks. And ani comes from the language of the Tupi people, which are Native American people who occupied, I'm not sure how many of them are still there, but occupied parts of Brazil primarily. But there's a bit of several nations that they were occupying when they were in their heyday. But my question is, have we ever had a way of describing or imitating the call of the Arnal? That weird set of sounds that Arnals make. But first of all, I should give the meaning. The meaning of ani for the Tupi people was, it was more like a label that referred to the fact that it is a social bird, it is a family-oriented bird. Because one of the things that is known about the Arnal is that they are social, they cluster. They are not like many other birds in that they have this social grouping that stays together. And they hunt together. They even reproduce together in the sense that they lay their eggs in a communal nest. And they all take turns keeping the eggs warm. And I think that's a phenomenal set of features in the bird kingdom. And bearing all that in mind, my homework task would be for the listeners to pay attention to all those facts, to look up more about the Arnal if they want, but to turn their minds to, is there a way of imitating their song? Is there a way of describing that sound, that set of sounds that they make that could potentially enter into the local lexicon? Because I don't think there's one now. Right?
Hey, Orwell could do it. He could come home as well. But it's interesting as you reference that. We quickly will distinguish between the Arnal and, as we call it, Ching Ching. We know the difference, but how many of us, what you shared, is new to us in terms of this, being a social creature, and you watch how protective it is. We see how it exhibits a level of intelligence that is not maybe unlike the parrot in a sense.
Which one are you talking
the,
about?
The Arnold.
The Arnold.
The Arnold.
Mm.
And I was thinking this recently. This is a bigger bird than the ching ching, and for some we may mistake the two. But you pronounce beak, and its plumes even are different. And you watch it watching you. So the sound that it makes, all right, I'll.
It's a weird sound. It's a weird set of sounds. It's not. Arnold is not a particularly attractive singer. Just like it's not a particularly attractive flyer, right? It's a very clumsy flyer, and it hunts primarily on the ground, as you notice. But the observers say that part of its clumsiness is useful to it, in that it does a lot of its hunting in low bush, and the flopping around that their wings tend to do, and their tail tends to do, helps to flush out the insects from on leaves or under bush or whatever, and they are more effective hunters for it. So even their apart clumsiness is good for them.
But this is where, as I listen to you, how many times have we seen the bird, dismissed it, looked at it but never saw it? And
not an attractive bird. not the one you use as a pin-up.
You know what? I mean, no change. Some of us have a. Let me.
But what we have here is the smooth build Ina apparently, as distinct from the groove build, I think it's called.
Yeah.
There's another subspecies that we don't have here.
So the anhinga would be it's the same terminology, similar terminology for the bird.
The anhinga?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that term.
Okay. Okay. I'll make sure that I have it correct now. But I'm sure that's the smooth bill is the one that we are. So I think it's the same, but I'll double check. And this is where we learn more by listening, by engaging and observing. Right. I'm looking forward to our sessions. I think it'll give us a chance.
Likewise.
And I really appreciate you taking time, because this is...
I appreciate having the time.
Well, you're most welcome, sir. And for those who are listening, I think it's the opportunity for us to speak with each other, not to speak with. And maybe as we engage, our friends around the dinner table, and I think that's the best place for the most effective discourse, to break bread.
It's among the places.
Yeah. All right. And I'm reminded that we have a holiday tomorrow.
Yes. I'm dressed for the Jubilee. I'm ready. I'm telling you.
You know what? I can see it now. Almost thinking as you referenced the future ambassador to Mexico. I think you bring home much festivity.
Yes.
So no programming tomorrow for Talk Today, nor for the record. On Monday, likewise. But I want to welcome you back on Tuesday. Our schedule is, we're excited to be able to welcome, hopefully, the Honorable Andre Ebanks as our guest.
Okay.
So we're working on that. Hopefully that'll materialize. And Mr. Dilbert, hopefully, we'll get to interact. I trust that the weekend will be not just a soggy one, but one where the
celebratory. Yeah,
and the soul is soothed by the singing sonnets of the seductress.
Wow! I didn't say that.
No, he didn't. He just inspired a thought. Who knows? Her call may have not been but a prelude to what lies within. So.
Aye.
My friends, enjoy the afternoon. See you on Tuesday.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Six years.
3 beloved isles. 1 beloved station. Radio Cayman.
The voice.
The heart. The soul